This is an old bottle, guys. This is actually one of the first bottles of fragrance that I got in my life. Nothing like that first sip of coffee. Guys, welcome to today's video. If this is your first time checking out my channel, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. A couple of videos ago I did a video on the 80s where I showed you 5 fragrances that I thought are still relevant today that were very much representing the 80s. So if you missed that video, check it out. I'll put a link here in the corner. But for today, we are going to go into the 90s. We are going to look at 5 fragrances that are very much representing the 90s. And I think it's a very interesting period for fragrances, designer fragrances, because we had a shift from the traditional, very bold and masculine fragrances towards like more of a refreshing, in a sense, era, introducing aquatics while at the same time still having some of those traditional aromatics from the 80s present. Think about carnation, geranium are notes that you will see in a couple of these fragrances, but also we got fragrances that were really sweet. So there was a new thing in sweet fragrances that had a lot of vanilla, tonka bean. Those were notes that instantly boomed in the 90s, specifically in the mid-90s. On that note, let's start with the first one, and I'm going to count this one as a fragrance from the 90s, even though it was actually introduced in 1989, and this one is by Joop, and I'll have to put a picture here because I currently don't have a bottle anymore, but this one is just regular Joop. Came in a very interesting bottle with a type of color that you don't generally associate with men's fragrances. Homme is an amber fougère created by Michel Almayrac. Wow, that's a mouthful. More towards the ambery than the fougère, because yes, there is that orange blossom. There is, I believe, also a beautiful note that is called heliotrope, which has a lush floral feel. You wouldn't really find this in a lot of men's fragrances, but altogether with the cinnamon and the musk, tonka bean, the vanilla, it all makes up for a very interesting composition that was very, very, very sweet. It did take a while for people to warm up to it, but it was very popular by the mid and end 90s, and back in the early 2000s, still people wore it a lot. So second fragrance that we are going to talk about is by the house of Chanel, and this one is called Egoïste. Egoïste is very close to my heart. This is an older bottle, a splash bottle actually, and yeah, I think Egoïste was also going on from traditional 80s colognes, but trying to be different in a sense that it was a little bit more gentleman-like. It has rosewood, it has a sandalwood in the dry down, beautiful rose. So the ingredient rosewood is actually really fitting because aside of that woodiness, we also have a lot of rose in this fragrance. It is also very heavy on the cinnamon, but not so sweet, obviously, as we had with Joop. This one is balanced to perfection. I believe this was created by Jacques Polo, if I didn't mention that already, which is the in-house perfumer for Chanel. I think he did a timeless fragrance with this, although if you wear it today it might smell a little bit dated, but I believe it is still a beautiful fragrance that was very remarkable back in the 90s and still today. I would also like to give out a mention to Obsession for Men by Calvin Klein, which came out a couple of years earlier in the 80s. I don't have a lot of experience with Obsession, to be honest, so I'm not going to compare these two, but I've seen a lot of notes shared between those two formulas. So I don't know, should I try it and see what the hype was all about? Let me know in the comments down below. So, couple of years after we got introduced to Egoïste, Chanel treated us with Egoïste Platinum. And yes, you've read that right. It has Egoïste Platinum on the bottle and not Platinum Egoïste. And that is because this is a 1992 bottle. So this was a pre-release bottle, while Egoïste focused a lot on that rosewood and that cinnamon. We had more of a fougère in Egoïste Platinum. So here we have a lot of lavender. We have that geranium that is still transitioning from like the 80s into the early 90s. That's a very traditional note that gives a certain herbaceous spiciness to a fragrance. But like I said, lavender also as well, citruses. It had that metallic opening that people talk about. It's very much present throughout the fragrance. This is a woody, floral, musky scent. I would say this is more 90s for me than Egoïste Platinum. The hype was more towards the early 2000s, where people really got used to Platinum Egoïste. I think this fragrance was actually quite ahead of its time in 1993. So, in 1993 we also had the fragrance Eternity for Men by Calvin Klein, another one that was really popular and still today. Again, I'm sorry I don't have a bottle of that. Let me know if I should try it out, but it is an aromatic fougère, and therefore it fits the 90s because we have a lot of aromatic fragrances in this list. 1994, Harry Fremont for Ralph Lauren. This is an old bottle, guys. This is actually one of the first bottles of fragrance that I got in my life. I must have been like 14 years old. It still smells amazing. This is an aromatic green fragrance, and it came out in 1994, a year after we got Platinum Egoïste. We got another musky fragrance that had a lot of aromatics, aldehydes and mint in the opening. Very prominent, very minty opening, very airy. It breathes on your skin. The sillage is very transparent, but muskiness all the way, you know. Instantly you get musk, white musk, clean musk. For the aromatics, you also have geranium, you have vetiver, you have ginger, okay? I believe the type of fragrance group that this created has expanded tremendously over the years. But if you want to get the OG, this is one of them actually. This is not an aquatic, although it, you know, the type of bottle color would make you believe that this is an aquatic. It definitely is a musky scent, okay, more so than an aquatic, but it had freshness. Back then freshness meant aromatics and less woodiness. So yeah, I really liked this as a teenager. You can see I still have a little bit left, and unfortunately I read that it kind of changed a lot during reformulations over the years, so I might have to go check out a new bottle and see how it compares. But for me, this is a beautiful, beautiful scent. Okay, a fragrance that I will not put in the list because I want to keep it at 5 fragrances, but was, it was bomb back in the 90s. Still today, you can get this for really affordable prices these days, and it's still really good, you know. Azzaro Chrome. I'm going to reserve this for a part 2 later on the channel. The most groundbreaking fragrance back in the 90s that is still sold like hot pizza baguettes, like hot cake. I don't know how to express that, but it was going over the counter like crazy. This is a fragrance by the famous perfumer called Francis Kurkdjian, who created his own perfume company in the 2000s. I don't need to introduce this one. This is, and I have multiple bottles. I I even have some sealed ones. This is sealed. Le Male is an amber fougère. It came on the market in 1995. He made it like with a certain refinement and attention to detail that it all fit together, and it came out really, really nice. It was an instant hit. This fragrance is still today really, really popular for good reason. This is a early 2000s bottle from 2002, I believe. The Le Male workout edition, the biceps edition. The juice is really dark, really, it's almost gold-like. It has a green gold tint. So we have a lot of lavender, a lot of cinnamon, mint. We had vanilla, tonka bean. We had woody notes like cedar. It is a very, very heavy fragrance, but it has a green, fresh opening. It's herbaceous. I do think that in the older bottles you have more of that caraway, you have a little bit more of that artemisia, that dark green, a little bit spicy quality. More of that in the early bottles than you have today. It has been reformulated quite a few times over the years. It still smells really good. It's still very much like its older self, but it lacks a little bit of depth. Perfumers were allowed to use more naturals at the higher dose. It's just overall more earthy and more green in the older formulation, but still today a very good fragrance. It got hit in performance, but it's still really nice. 1996, guys, the second half of the 1990s, and this fragrance needs no introduction, just like the bombshell fragrance by Jean-Paul Gaultier that we just talked about. This is still today very, 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 very popular. It was a joint effort by Alberto Morillas, Annick Menardo, and Christian Dussoulier. By their efforts and teamwork, they created a aromatic aquatic that was revolutionary. I mean, I think in the beginning it even sold better than Le Male, because it was such a versatile fragrance. It was something men had not smelled a lot before. Yes, we had Eau Sauvage by Dior in the 60s, and that was a citrus heavy fragrance. But Eau Sauvage back then was getting a little bit dated. It had that, timeless, elegant, classy, mature vibe, but this was so much less serious. It was just a playful, fresh aquatic by Armani Acqua di Gio. Now, again, I don't have a bottle at hand, so I'll put a picture here so you can enjoy that timeless looking bottle. Alright, hold it right there, guys. I've been looking for this bottle for over a year and I couldn't find it anywhere. Of course, after I'm done shooting the video, I just found it again. I know it's not the original, it's the Essenza, and the bottle looks a little bit different. It's not the frosted glass, but here you go. I went through multiple of these bottles back in the early 2000s, and it was just so amazing. Such a lightweight kind of fragrance in terms of how it comes off your skin. It was quite strong. I mean, it was not the beast that Le Male was, because it lacked, of course, the heavy amber note. It lacked vanilla and all of those sweet, heavy, dense notes. But it did have a great sillage, and it projected really well for the first 3 hours. I remember getting a lot of compliments on Acqua di Gio, but it has a light-headed, aquatic, transparent projection, and it had a lot of citrus, but it also has that cologne note, not cologne, but cologne. I think it's like the precursor to Ambroxan from the 2000s, But yeah, it was very heavy in that composition. It had floral notes as well. It smelled a little salty. It had like a mineral salty quality as well, and cedar and white musk. So Acqua di Gio, yeah, I think even today a lot of people still buy it. If you plan to, don't do it. Still smells really nice, but it's just so fleeting today. You're not going to go over a couple of hours of longevity and projection, which is really, it's a shame, because they still ask for a decent amount of money for it. It's still quite to the expensive side of designer fragrances. There are flankers that are good and that are available today, but unfortunately with Armani, I don't know why, but a lot of their best-selling fragrances they just discontinue. Acqua di Gio Profumo is just, it's axed. Attitude Extrême, back in the day, a huge fan of that fragrance. Just suddenly, all of a sudden, gone. What is your favorite from this selection of fragrances? Let's just put them side by side here. This one, should I do it in another video? Let me know. Check out these beautiful Le Male bottles. Thank you so much for watching, as usual. Hope you have a great day. See you in the next one.